101.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 21 minutes to the top of the hour, Standard Chartered Priority Banking understands your financial goals are unique. Whether you're planning for retirement, building a foundation for your family's future, or making your wealth work for you, remember that solutions are offered for every stage in life. You have a dedicated relationship manager and access to expert advisory backed by partnerships with global fund houses like Alliance, Ammond, and Franklin Templeton. Your wealth journey is in for the best ride. What are you waiting for? Send an email to wealth.kenya@sc.com and somebody's going to hold your hand as you get onto this journey for the future. Our guest this hour is Eliud Ngugi, and he is an advocate of the High Court, and we're talking about estate planning. Now, when you heard, we're not talking about estate Buruburu Phase 1. No. We're talking about your estate, the things that you have amassed over time, property, assets and things like that, and who you would then leave it to. And we talk about it in jest, but it's actually serious, where a lot of people are not leaving anything. Okay, they may be leaving things behind in word, but then we read here every day, we interrogate these stories where there is usually a quibble after the demise of someone, and then a wife jumps out of the woodwork somewhere with children, like you say, who look exactly like the deceased.
Colored photocopy.
Yeah. Yes. Somebody says, actually, you know what? I sired a child with me. Whose responsibility is it to make sure that before this happens, anybody who might be, even if you suspect that you could have a child somewhere and you do not know, put it down on paper so that we don't have this aftermath squabbles that we see later?
The person who is responsible for that is you and I. We need to plan our lives. But if there are children born out of wedlock, for example, it will be very difficult because under Section 27 of the Succession Act, 29, it has a provision on beneficiaries. And beneficiaries are either wives, former wives, then their grandparents, and then people who are being provided for, or children who are being provided for by the deceased person
while he or she was alive.
Yes, while they were alive.
Any children who are
because it just provides children of a deceased person or any other person who was being provided for. So it could even be a worker coming in and saying, hey, I was benefiting from this person, I was dependent on this person, I need to now get a share or get the support from this family. So it's upon any of us to make sure now that we outline and we say how we want to divide our estates, so that we don't come for everything, but you're able to allocate and say, I leave maybe the monies in this account that you just mentioned in that bank. They only have access to that amount of money, and someone else will get probably the bigger share on this other end. So you are able to control and to see who gets what, rather than the court deciding on your behalf, because the court will end up going in an equal manner and distributing everything equally, or asking you guys to sit down and agree, and when you fail to agree, the court is going to force you. Yeah.
You know, one of the things about the law, and one of the things that makes it daunting, is that we know it exists, we know what it does, we even know what it's supposed to do. But bless you. But as lay people, we know very little about it. And the only time we come into contact with it is when something happens. So we go about our lives not taking into account what it is that the law can do for us on a daily basis. We do not. It's when someone has rammed into me and they are being difficult. They're claiming that by driving on the left side of the road, I offended them, whatever it is, and we say, no, let's take this thing to court. That's when now the law comes in. Or I've done business with an individual and they have found it appropriate for them not to pay me as we had agreed. Then again, so every time many of us come into contact with the law is in an adversarial position. Something has happened and I need an arbiter. And it need not be, because I don't think the law exists specifically for those purposes. Now, there are calm situations during which the law can actually play a very important role in how my life is conducted when I'm alive and even after. Now, that bit is missing in our understanding of the law and what is it can do for us. Because one of the things we see with matters of succession is turmoil, because there are others where succession doesn't hit us because there isn't much to fight about. But we Kenyans seem to have the ability to find something to fight about, even if there's very little to fight about. But the cases that get into the media, this is where we are cases where there's a lot of money involved. And it's acrimonious. And so you wonder, could this thing not have been settled earlier so that it doesn't get to this? Now, that's where the matter that I was speaking of how it is we can get to know about these things. The reason why we get to know about schools is because the schools tell us about themselves. And if there's one thing Kenyans agree on, is that the education of their children is of paramount importance to them.
Yes.
But you see, my friend, the law is just as important.
Let me comment on that and say sometimes the judiciary will have open days. And judicial service week, and we go out and advertise and say and invite members of the public and say, hey people, come to the nearest court station near your house or near where you live, like at Milimani or in Kisumu or Kajiado or Ngong. Come to these places and ask any questions that you may have.
How many times does this happen?
It happens once a year. It does happen.
It is an excellent start.
Yeah.
It is an excellent start, and the judiciary must be lauded, because it's something that never used to get done, but it now gets done. People actually get to interact with the judiciary. It is a wonderful thing. As a consumer, not enough. Not enough. It is one day.
And also, I think the fact that we still have the existing stereotype that Kenyans just don't want to be associated with the court. Anyone who's supposed to go to a court is a criminal and all that. So we also need to have communication around that the judiciary exists to help us. It is your friend. You are welcomed in the judiciary. Because there's also the notion that lawyer is expensive. Why should I waste my time, go to a lawyer that I cannot afford? So it is an entire communication around it. But also just to add on matters to do with I have this property, I need to transfer it. I have children outside. I am the only one who knows about it. My family does not know about it. Is it my responsibility to make sure that in the property that I have, I bequeath them? And how do I go about it if it's not under the law?
Well, that's why it's up to you as a person to prepare a will, because you're the only one who knows where these properties that you bought are, where they exist, their location, where their titles are. So you are best placed to know this information and to now distribute this. And this is one of the advantages of preparing a will, that you are able not to safeguard all your properties. They don't end up going to the government, like we've seen last week. I think billions of shillings went to the government. Yet, if these persons who had these accounts, I know how much is on my M-Pesa, I know how much is in my bank account, how many bank accounts I have, it's your responsibility to know these movable and immovable, we call them movable and immovable properties, where they are, and for you to now allocate how many beneficiaries do I have. Do I even have a passion for some industries or for some entities? So there's a children's home that I am passionate about, and if I'm passionate about them, then I'll be able to include them in my will and say, hey, I want to leave this gift to this children's home to continue benefiting them and taking care of them. And so it's up to you, and that's why it's important to have this document, because if you die without preparing for it, then you can see how many people are losing out. These properties, etc. There is also another aspect that CT might be interested in when it comes to preparation of a will. It gives you a chance to also prepare how you want to be buried and for people not to be too extravagant, spending nights and millions of shillings and fundraising money from friends and buying very expensive clothes, yet I want to just have a simple life, and whatever I left, I want it to go to the benefit, for example, of education. So in your will, you can even dictate and say, I want to be buried in simple attire that will not cost 5,000 shillings, and the cost of my burial should not cost more than 30,000 shillings or 20,000 shillings, and so there will be no vaccinated animals that you talk about dying.
Yeah.
Those animals do not deserve to die. You'll be able to now have that burial planned through writing that will.
Okay.
In my community, it will be disregarded. Everything you've just said, I can write in the will, they'll say.
So that's very interesting. And
On
that
that
was
particular day, he wrote that thing when you don't know. That guy was delirious. It was malaria. No. This is not this is not how we want to bury his.
So then how do you deal with that particular issue when now the law, which many people in a traditional setting will say is a Western concept, this will writing? Because traditionally, did we write down on a piece of paper what you were going to live? No,
we told people.
The father will tell his sons, this shamba I have left for you, this one I have left for you. Or he'll sometimes tell his wife, when this might happen to me, first son will take this, second son will take this. We know the daughter will go and be married off by somebody else, so we know that you will have this. Or in some cases where you have some forward-thinking fathers, they will say, my daughters will also have part of this land. Rarely was it written on a piece of paper. So many will tell you, just like CT is saying, that this concept that you're bringing of putting things down, and we're not talking about in 1905, we're talking now in 2024, and they will tell you that this concept is a foreign one. You want to tell us how to bury you? It's never going to happen. Things like, if the wife was not married properly here, she will not be buried here, kind of thing, right? Still carries on into today's world. So here we are saying, write a will, because it can say who you will leave your property to, it can say how you will be buried, it can say what kind of money you will spend. How then do we do this kind of succession planning in the light of a very traditional practice that is still existent today?
The courts have been faced with this situation, and they have declared and given a direction on this issue. And a recent one was from the Gusii family, a Gusii community, where there was a home in the city and there was a home up country. And the court went ahead to say, because the person wanted to be buried here, the court went ahead and said, we need to honor their wishes. So the court will honor the wishes of a person. But it also doesn't mean that when you prepare and make some of these requests, they have to be in writing. I've just, maybe I did not share this, that you can also have an oral will, but with a limitation that you have to die. Under the law, you have to die within 3 months. So you don't have to write that will, but you can just make declarations in the presence of witnesses, 2 or more witnesses. But you need to die within 3 months, unless
I'm imagining this saying. I'm with my boy somewhere, and we were talking about, guys, given this gentle age that we've arrived at, we need to say, I'm the lawyer. I told you, by the way, guys, you don't need to try these things. We can just sort of like
I'm
record
just telling you.
Record it. Yeah, you got to record it on your phone. Said, lawyer friend. But we need witness. I'm your witness. Okay, Nani, you come, witness. Okay, so how do you want this done? Done. You've said it. Really?
But you have until February 20th.
Yes, you need to die before then. Now, the problem is this, even if you record it and you send it, the recipient will say, what? Yeah, sounds like him, but how do you know it is him?
Exactly.
Number one, first of all, those friends, those drunken friends of his, the people who are witnessing what?
That we disregard as a family.
What? Since when? I'm simply saying that if only there was a straight line with regards to how it is we relate to the law. If only there was a very straight line in how we relate to our traditions and how we relate to things that have to do with death. There's nothing straightforward about it. And the more educated people are, and if you happen to have children who are now grown up, now that thing gets really interesting.
Yes.
Because each of them will have an opinion.
True.
And that is why the interaction and a firm relationship with the law must start early. So by the time it's being brought in as a reference point, we're talking about something that we're familiar with. If it's brought in as a case of last resort arbiter, it will be fought. The very law that you've injured is what will be fought. And when you talk about court deciding when someone will be buried, it means you're going to be in some freezer somewhere for a very, very long time before you're actually buried. Now, do we know the agony of the family when all this is going on? Spouse, children, simply because some tradition has stepped in and there's an issue here and it's taking time. There is no closure.
I think as well, there is the fact that as Kenyans, our interaction with the law is almost zero. The constitution is in place, it's the politicians telling us about it. Our interaction with the law and what it provides, it's zero. That means proper communication, as we've said here, is needed. And perhaps you guys need to talk to LSK to allow you guys to do these things more other than just annually.
Probably, very true. Our interaction is very limited.
The ambulance chasers are also going to come in.
It's very limited.
Yeah, and then start.
But there are a few of us who are out there trying our level best. You'll find I have an account on TikTok and in all my social media where I just talk about the law throughout and I give out information. I have colleagues who also do similar things on YouTube. It might also require us to be to choose to also learn. Go on YouTube, just search on these issues because there are materials on this. Documentation. I've had people even on those traditional stations where they teach in mother tongue, and so it's out there, and we may need to just take that step and listen and look for the information because the information is there. But I'm not saying that we are doing very well. Probably your view is taken, and that your view is taken. And we have had this conversation. I think one of the committees I sit in called court users in the family division. I sit in a committee with some magistrates and other judicial officers and other lawyers. And part of the conversation has been 2025. We have to do better. We are going to have a family event. We are going to try and seek these avenues to educate the masses because we are aware. It's true. You're not getting this information, and you're finding yourself in these situations where cities mentioning, finding yourself in those situations because probably you do not know what to do about estate planning.
Right.
Yeah.
Very quickly, a question that you mentioned about children and then those that legitimate or illegitimate having been taken care of at the time when a particular testament was written. What happens to those children who are still protected by family court when it comes to their parents and taking care of them, and then now would look for a kind of care from somebody who has passed on? What really happens to them at that point? What happens to those children who may not have been declared at the time of death but still have a right to be taken care of by their parents who come out later and say he was their father?
What happens to them is, well, guardians will need to step up and help the children to come and make a claim. Because if you are not aware about, you knew who your father was, but he was not taking care of you.
Your mother knew who he was.
And now he's passed on. You will need your mother, who knew the person, to come out and now contest. Because when we go through the succession process, you file the documentation, where even with a will, after preparing that document, it will be filed upon you passing on, it will be filed in court, and the copy of the will will be attached there. And then it will go through a gazette notice process, where gazettement will happen, and within 6 months, you're supposed to report back to court to confirm confirmation of grant, what we call confirmation of grant, which is taken that within those 6 months, the public is aware. They have read the Kenya Gazette and they are aware about your passing on. And at this point, if you are the guardian or the mother of this child who knew the father has passed on, then you need to file a protest in court to dispute or to request to be included as part of this estate before it is distributed to everyone else.
Okay.
So they come into court and file this protest and say, I have this child. I would even like to go for a DNA to prove this, or I even have photos and documentation, and that one is taken into consideration by the courts and a provision is given.
Very vital information to always have, and we want to thank you for being in the room this morning to at least shed some light on that, and definitely conversations that should continue. Asante Sana. Eliud Ngugi is an advocate of the High Court, and we'll be looking at estate succession planning and why it's important to do it this morning. Good morning. It's 8 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4